I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. We are staring down the barrel of Thanksgiving. Andrew Kuo, what are you thankful for this year?
Wow, I'm thankful for our huge night last night, man. Woo! There were not as many flights as I would hope, but we dined like kings, man.
They're calling it Thanksgiving 1.
Original Thanksgiving?
Second Thanksgiving, which occurs on the 24th. That's Thanksgiving 2, more Thanksgivings.
Is there a Thanksgiving 3?
Let's do it.
Can we just call Christmas
Third.
Thanksgiving 3? New Year's Thanksgiving 4?
Yeah, I say but those are pretty good holidays. Let's find those ones that like Arbor Day.
All right, quick.
That could be like another Thanksgiving, totally. Like President's Day, another Thanksgiving. This all makes sense to me.
All right, can you give the power rankings of holidays real quick off the dome?
Arbor Day 1.
Tight. That was a test and you passed.
You know, I gotta say though, Thanksgiving and Christmas are the only two American holidays that include feasts. Like Christmas Day, I don't think we're all eating geese or whatever. But Christmas is a day for a big dinner, right?
For sure.
Like generally, and then we have Thanksgiving, and they're kind of back to back. They're within a month.
Yeah.
Like they're feast season, if you will.
Would you consider
Where the rest of our feasts?
What about American Halloween when we feast on Kit Kats and Baby Ruths and Snickers?
Not the same.
That's not the same kind of feast, I know. But it is about eating-ish.
Yeah, it's a little gluttonous. I feel like Easter used to be a feast, and we've kind of discarded it. Maybe even adopted Cinco de Mayo in its stead.
I'm a heathen, so I don't really understand Easter. It's religious stuff, I get, but I don't understand the tradition of Easter. Is that when you make a ham? Does your family come together for Easter?
I've never had a gathering with members of my family outside of the nuclear unit for Easter. It's not like, ooh, cousins are coming over, aunts and uncles. It's an Easter celebration. No.
Oh wait, I have one. Super Bowl Sunday.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's when
Again.
What?
But it's in January. Like we are really backloading feast season.
4th of July barbecue. What about that?
That counts. Memorial Day is kind of a feast, right? Labor Day, Memorial Day.
I was thinking
That's a barbecue day.
I was watching the new Mark Wiens HBO Max show, and why does every food show start with like food brings people together? He said that, and I started thinking like, no, it doesn't. In equal parts, it divides us, right? Like, okay, not everyone's a king like me and shoves fettuccine.
Sorry.
My life is not a joke, but like I'm shoving fettuccine down my throat with my hands over the sink.
Right.
No one's around.
Well, it is feast season, yeah.
Yeah, every day is feast season for me. But like, no one's around. Like, how many meals do you eat with other people? Like percentage wise, 50, 20, 10? I mean, we went hard last night, but like, we don't get to do that as much as I'd like. How many meals do you eat alone?
I mean, I would say, as someone who does not have a family, lunch I usually eat alone because I have it at my house, or I'll go out and grab something quickly. I don't really go out for like a feast lunch, like, oh, let's meet for lunch. I mean, now and then, but typically lunch is not like a social gathering.
because maybe I'm thinking about it because a buddy of ours was like, oh, I have a family, but they're gonna go. I have work to do. They're going off to a different location for the holidays. I'm gonna be eating Thanksgiving dinner alone. If you guys call me thinking that I'm lonely, lose my number. I want to eat Thanksgiving dinner alone. I'm looking forward to it. And it got me thinking, I'm like, hells yeah. Like, there's so many meals I'm like, don't look at me. No one look in my direction. I'm going to eat this pile of fettuccine.
I was thinking about some of these ideas when I was in Montreal and, had some restaurant visits by myself. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel any compunctions about doing that in the least. It never bugs me. Mm-hmm. And in fact, kind of what you were saying is like, sometimes when I'll go out for a lunch or a dinner, I prefer it to be by myself. I like sitting at the bar and, reading the newspaper or just shooting the shit or just staring blankly into space. Mm-hmm. You don't get to do that really, right, though, when you have a family. You're like, oh, I have to feed other people. There are literal mouths to feed. I have not eaten exactly what I've wanted to eat in years because you got to think about the other people you got to feed, all that stuff. But I have a really generous friend, and they always cook, and they're always like, come over, man, I just made this awesome meal. But it's the palate is not my Asian sensibility, man. It's dry as a desert. It's usually something in a cast iron pan that's been in my opinion it's beautiful food, all the fixings, it's great, but I'm always I have a finite number of meals left in my life, a few thousand. You were like Donald Trump and his heartbeats, except one of the smartest thing Donald Trump has ever said, for sure. I love that. He's not wrong. Prove to me that he's wrong. It's clearly true. You do have a finite number of heartbeats. At some point, your heart will stop working. Mm-hmm. That's accurate. The only flaw to his theory is he doesn't know how many, so it's hard to pace. But he's assuming he doesn't have as many as he might have, for good reason. But yeah, man, I only have a few thousand of these meals left. Is there a food that you would love to eat that you're embarrassed to eat in front of other people? Maybe some non-genuine parms. Yep. I don't want to be roasted for counterfeit parming. Are you horking down tofu parms alone, staring at candles in your dirty ass room? Well, let's think. How many meals do you think you have left? Let's say you live another 40 years. So we got 365. That puts us at 14,000 meals if it's one a day. You're probably not eating 3 meals a day. Let's say 2. I don't believe in the 3 meals a day thing. No. Sometimes 2, sometimes 4. Well, the good news is if you live to 80, you have close to 30,000 meals left. It's not enough, man. I want 30,001. This is bullshit. What is this bullshit? You know what I mean, though. Come on. I hate being robbed of a meal. Nothing makes me more annoyed than being robbed of a meal with dry ass protein. But, well, I guess my point here is it's less about detracting from that 30,000. It's about from the day itself. Oh, I had a bad meal today. I didn't eat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What qualifies for you as a bad meal? Usually something involving beans, a salad, or rice. I'm not a big rice guy. I mean, I'll eat rice, but not my favorite. I'm a bucatini boy. I do sometimes have those meals where you're like, all right, I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like ordering. I'm just gonna whip something up, and you're like, a lot of times that can be a squandered meal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I just threw something over some rice, ate some vegetables. Yeah, those are my least favorite cooking shows. It's like pantry pasta. I'm like, aren't we trying to avoid this? Shouldn't things in the pantry stay in the pantry? They're not meant to be used. They're like trophies. They're like books on a shelf. Yeah. They're not meant to be read. No. The Kardashians got it right. Oh, right. Like, I read an article a little while ago about Resy, and there's been a few stories. And Resy, which I'm sure everyone knows, is the app that you use to make reservations, and it's kind of dominated the field in terms of better restaurants of late. I think there was what was the other app that was kind of competitive for a while, but Resy has sort of seized the mantle.
I don't use any of those apps, so I only know of Resy. But a few of my friends have like a rolling strategy with this.
Okay, so this is kind of, I think there's a theory I've heard that it's kind of fucking up dining in New York, especially at popular restaurants, because Resy will only let you book a certain amount of time ahead, and the new slots open up at midnight. So you have huge dorks who want to eat at restaurants waiting at midnight to make a reservation for like a month from now. So people are just loading up all these reservations ahead of time by 3 weeks.
And then canceling a few days out.
And then they'll cancel them. But in the meantime, you're there like, all right, so I can't get a reservation all this time because people have just booked it all the way up. So you kind of have to go on and try to find things that are opening up in real time. I always feel like you should just be able to walk into a restaurant and see what's up.
There's some restaurants that do that, but like, I kind of like the idea of it. So my friend is one of those dorks, and he'll have like half a dozen reservations going on like Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, nights he wants to go out on, and he'll just like cancel them when he picks one. And he, I think, goes weeks out. So like 2 weeks from now, he'll be like booked up at his favorite spots.
Well, you have to be weeks out for the reason I was saying.
Yeah.
If you're going to use that strategy and you want to make a whole bunch, you would have to do it right when they turn over.
I mean, restaurants almost turned into two restaurants, right? Because I saw like Bonnie's, a place that we always go with our buddy Pablo. It's like they have the inside for Resy, and then the outside they posted just being like, oh, this is not, you can just walk up for all these outdoor seating spots, and you almost have to make two, like first class and coach in your restaurant, right? Like you cannot survive without an online reservation system in 2022 unless you're an amazing restaurant.
I was going to say some places that did not have reservations adopted them because of COVID protocols and just having limited amounts of tables, limited amounts of percentage of use they were allowed to have, and I think maintain them. I don't know if, say, Lilia has reservations now. I felt like they were a place that maybe didn't used to, but I could be wrong. But I don't know, man. I feel like calling the restaurant and talking to someone, I know this is very boomery, but I like that idea of like call up the restaurant and see what's going on. I don't know, man.
You're the king.
I'm not trying to be a proper bin man here.
You're the king of all these West Village Italian restaurants that all sound the same to me. I thought Willie Staley was shooting, taking shots at you.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm the West Villian, the West Villian Italian restaurant connoisseur. I mean, I've been to a bar Petey now and then.
You rattle off restaurant names that I don't even know are real. Like, in his tweet, he was like, what's this restaurant? E Prosciutti. It's like, oh, I'm going to E Spaghettino. I'm like, what the hell is that? And you're like, it's amazing, trust me. And we go, and it's amazing. I'm like, what the hell is this, man? It's like, oh, there's no way we can get it on a Friday.
Well, some of the places that they're talking about on Resy, in the story I read, like there's an example, is one that is this place called Dame, like Dame.
And
I know, I was about to say, I know before people drift off, it's not about the Blazers.
Yeah.
But it's impossible to get a reservation there.
Impossible.
And these guys were coming up with bots and rigging the system and starting these like secret chats to share reservations with each other. And it's because there's like 10 tables. I went there.
Right.
It was good. It was good. It was probably servos. Generally speaking.
Right.
It was that kind of restaurant. Seafood heavy, slightly gimmicky, but overall good.
How's the vibe? How's the clientele?
It was fine. It was like a spot in the West Village. There was no, and it's small, so one party
Knicks or
could
Nets
change the
fans?
dynamics.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Knicks fans. But also, do you want to go to a restaurant that is full of people who have been like fighting to get that reservation? I don't know. That's not vibey.
Right, but right, you're talking about like this laissez-faire, like bohemian, like rolling up. I'm gonna get like a
I'm
steak
saying
at
what
11
people are
p.m.
afraid to think.
Basically, the Lucien vibe, right? Like you just want to roll in and get a martini at like 12 midnight, have it be packed, maybe people smoking outside. You like the old Paris vibe, like you like a French
A
bistro.
Christmas restaurant.
Did you see Grayson Carter's top 50 that our friend Caitlin Phillips constructed of the 50 most important people in the downtown scene?
Saw some familiar faces. I didn't read the full list though.
It felt like the entire crew at Lucien. I was like, this is just the Lucien crew, man. Which makes
I
it
don't know
good,
who
but
made the list, but was it Caitlin?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean,
Is there a resi
that makes
involved?
sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, Zach, the owner of the restaurant's one of the 50. Is there a resi system to get into Lucien?
Yeah,
They
I
don't
guess
do
they're.
it, right?
No, I think they're on there. I mean, I don't know anyone who makes reservations on Resi for Lucien, but if they're on there, I'm sure people do. The people we know generally would just roll in there or talk to Zach.
They should do a resi system. I'm not mad at resi, by the way. I think it is a logical thing that's been gamed poorly. They'll figure it out eventually. But shouldn't there be a resi system for sports bars? Shouldn't you be like, I'm down for 7:30 for the 4 bar seats at the one sports bar downtown?
We still haven't figured out where to watch basketball games in the city of New York.
I do not know where to watch a game. I had guests over yesterday, and the guests were from London, and they
Ooh
were
la
just like,
la!
yeah, and they were just like milling about, and I was like trying to serve them food, and I was like, "Why are you so fidgety?" And I'm like, "Oh God, it's a World Cup," and they're like, "Is it possible to turn on this big ass TV with the sound off?" I'm like, "Absolutely, man." And their relief as soon as they saw the pitch, the green of the pitch, was so relatable because like there's been many times me and you were just walking downtown being like, we'd really like to catch the second half of this game and we do not know where to go.
I like the idea that they're like, "Do you mind putting that on?" You're like, "Absolutely not. It's a rerun of Brumdog's breakout performance last night." And I saw their eyes light up. as
Oh,
he
you want to watch?
scampered across the hardwood.
You want to watch a sports match? Here's an edited sizzle reel of RJ Barrett's season that I've put together painstakingly. It's a couple minutes long.
It's 30 seconds
Yeah, that's right.
of him getting rebounds.
Have you been following the footy games?
I've looked at the scores. My biggest gripe is, yeah, sure, Qatar has human
Qatar.
rights violations.
Wait, what is this place you talked
Qatar?
about? Is it Qatar? Qatar?
We tried to sort this yesterday, and we found out that they don't care, which was a relief. They don't give a shit, and that maybe it rhymes with guitar.
There's other words like this. I've wondered out loud how to pronounce the last name of the Nets sharpshooter. Is it Watanabe or Watanabe? I
Harris.
don't know.
Joe Harris.
Corey.
Curie.
Yeah. Surrey. Surrey.
Siri.
Yeah.
But yeah, the World Cup in Qatar. Qatar.
Yo, it is.
Anyway, again, we've heard they don't care. In Doha, it's the least of their concerns. Yes, there are human rights violations. Yes, thousands of people have died in their oppressive heat building these stadiums. Yeah, I know. But what I'm concerned about is that I can't wander around on a nice, warm summer day and hear the olays and jubilant shouts of New Yorkers at bars at 10 a.m. I'm being robbed of that personally.
You don't see the footy fans spilling out of bars, throwing fists in colorful kits.
I guess they're doing that, but it's just really cold right now. There isn't that same communal spirit. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure it's happening. But that is my favorite part of the World Cup is you'll just kind of see a group of jubilant Venezuelans rolling down like, yeah. I'm like, ooh, you guys got the W today. There's a nice sort of like, even if you don't give a shit about footy, which I don't, there is still something fun about everybody being into something athletic based. That's not football.
And it's every time the World Cup happens, it reminds me of how this city is kind of different than most American cities, because we're not hopping into cars and meeting each other. We're just getting wasted and walking bar to bar, right? Like, so if you check out like a match like in the East Village, be like, oh, I'm gonna skip over to the next spot where my other mates are. I'm wasted. I'm just gonna stumble over like 40 feet away or like 2 blocks, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, my friend hit me up and she's like, you want to watch some matches? Like, don't care which ones.
Yeah.
Just go see whatever at some time. I'm like, yeah, let me know. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Just pick a game. We'll go and watch some. But I think my favorite World Cup memory was in the summer when on Spring Street. Remember there used to be the Spring Street Festival, Spring Street.
I remember Gangnam
Party,
Dance.
whatever.
Yeah.
It was like the block party, and it was the last one that they had, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it was during the World Cup, and I think I don't know if it was Nike or whoever got involved with it and put up this massive screen. They were showing the game, and they were serving alcohol there. You had to have wristbands, but there was all up and up.
Yeah.
And then the feed went out right at the end, and I think it was a game between Italy and France, maybe. That sounds about right. And the feed went out, and it was just this mad scramble where everyone was just running in different directions, frantically trying to find a TV somewhere to watch the rest of the game. But thousands of people were just immediately panicked, and I was like, if I cared about this, if this was like the end of the NBA Finals, I'd be losing my shit.
But now that you have your phone, you wouldn't be, right? You would just immediately dial up like a streaming app.
Yes.
And then we'd all be huddled around the little screen.
100%. But back then, whatever that was, 10 years ago, couldn't really do it. You could see what happened. You could watch like a play-by-play or something. But yeah, I don't think the capabilities were quite there.
I mean, I remember we were done with dinner a few weeks ago, and we were like, we'd like to watch the end of these baseball games. And it was such an abstract thought, not because it was difficult to find a place to watch, because it was, but that feeling was so old-timey to me. I'm like, I too would like to watch the end of these playoff baseball games featuring the Yankees of New York, and it just makes me think that the way we've been consuming all this stuff, especially as Twitter changes, this whole Elon Musk thing, I was like thinking, everyone wants Twitter to be the New York Times, but really I just want it to be Mad Magazine, and like the way we shift consuming these things is like kind of real when you just want to watch a footy match, right? And like maybe the reason why there's no sports bars is because the sports bar god is just like, you guys have your sports bar in your pocket. It's in your phone. I don't have to have a screen in my place where I can just make money playing the Rolling Stones and serving beer.
We're also being snobby though, because we don't want to go to the sports bars that exist. We want to go to a
You
place
mean in
that's not a
Midtown?
sports
In
bar.
Mito? Oh, right.
But we want to go to a sports bar that's not a sports bar. Like, it's a bar that we think is cool that has a TV that only plays the games that we want, and then it turns those TVs off.
Right, right.
Do you have one of those places for us?
Right. Like, I don't enjoy Hair of the Dog. That is a sports bar that's easy to locate, but really miserable in there, man.
I mean, I walked into a proper sports bar after one of my pickup basketball runs, and it was a
sport-
bit sensory overload. There
Yeah.
were like 25 TVs all showing different events. They were playing like brunch club dance music at a high volume. I'm like, oh, right, Andrew and I know about this place. We know where it is.
Yeah.
We could come here and watch games at the sports bar that we're always bitching and moaning doesn't exist. It certainly exists, and here it is. It's jammed with people, and they're watching college football.
Like, yeah, I mean, my thought about sports changing is definitely related to gambling, right? Like, I have so many of my friends, our friends, have like turned on to this like daily gambling stuff, especially with the NBA season popping off as it is. But like, I don't know how many people are watching a game anymore. It's like they have to keep tabs on 5 games. Our friend was joking, right? Like, he just watches this app, Stat Tracker, instead of the actual game, and he just sees like all these numbers streaming, and he can click on like his preferred like players and his teams and his bets and all that. And like, there's no way to do that socially. Like, that's kind of a private thing, sort of like eating over the sink. It's like the gambling part is a solitary event, right?
Sort of. I mean, especially with people putting together, combination bets, where I feel like if everyone was just betting on the outcome of a game with a spread or something, you can hear people cheering. Oh, yes, they covered, or they won, whatever it is. It could
Yeah,
be
winning
outright.
and losing, whatever. Yeah.
Because when I think of communal gambling, I think of the racetrack. I think of Aqueduct. And
But is that
everyone's
popular?
yelling.
Other people
No.
who still go.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not popping, but
Mm.
there's people there. But, as the horses are going around, everyone's yelling. And then as it starts evening out, there's like you are standing up yelling for your horse along with other people who are rooting for that same horse against someone else. And then your guy wins and you cheer and you kind of look around and you see other people like, yeah, yeah. Like, Quo Sync with a win.
Right.
Oh, it's the overwhelming favorite.
Right.
Quo eating over the sink.
I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too hard about this because maybe there's just like fewer bars. Maybe there's an overall lack of places to go to in general, and sports bars are kind of just a part of that story.
I just think the sports bar that we are looking for is
Doesn't
not the sports
exist.
bar
Yeah.
that exists.
Right.
We're trying to
So you're telling me there's no
really,
drum and
split that. We're trying to split the difference here in a way that does not have a real audience.
So, okay, drum and bass, loud drum and bass. The New York Knicks edited, fast forward, so they edit out the commercials and defensive possessions. Noodle soups and beer. Everyone just can have one beer.
I think that was Boys Don't Cry.
I miss that place, man. That was a good one. Even though
That
it
one
was,
came closest to your platonic ideal.
I mean, shout out to those guys. They made us really feel at home. But I'm surprised you put up with it because it's a distinctly Golden State Warriors bar.
Yeah, not ethical at all. I agree. I was telling my nephew, I was like, this was a Warriors bar. He's like, why? I'm like, I asked the very same thing, my friend. The wisdom of a child. It's like, well, he's like, a Warriors bar? We're not in San Francisco. I'm like, this kid gets it. He knew.
But like, yeah,
The emperor has no clothes.
it's weird to walk around with like a young person, like your nephew, and experience the city through their eyes because there's simple things, right? Like, Why is the garbage on the street? It's like garbage is gross. Why is it on the why do I always see garbage on the street? And you're just like, well, there's no alleys, because it's kind of the architect, and then there's a racist city planner and all this stuff. And it's like, well, shouldn't we take it off of the sidewalk? Because don't we like to eat food on the sidewalk? You're like, oh, you and your logic.
Yeah, explaining why adults do stupid things to a child is a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
So wait, what's going on in Ukraine? Well,
So
why don't they not do that? Well, you see,
you're
think
having
about Putin.
you're having 7 dinners at the same time. It's like, well, no, I pick one and I cancel the rest. It's like, why don't you just pick one from the start?
Well,
But yeah, I mean,
why is it feast season? Well, late in the year we do a lot of feast.
why would you waste a meal on beans when there's noodles to be had?
You only have approximately 30,000 meals left. But as a 7-year-old, I have 70,000 meals left. So I can squander one on beans on occasion. I'll just eat goldfish all day.
Uncle Andrew, why are you eating on a plate when the sink is right there?
Wisdom of babes. But yeah, the gambling stuff is kind of crazy because I feel like now when I go to a game, I just hear people chirping about their prop bets behind me. Like, oh, yeah, it doesn't look like, Claxton is going to get his 12 rebounds. I have KD scoring over 25, and you're like, it's so boring.
I love it. It's great. It's the right way to do it, right? Because like a Knicks game versus the Bucks is not thrilling, but if you have some prop bets, it's fun.
Yeah, but then I don't know. I feel like there is a world where paying attention to those things can be interesting, and there's a financial incentive to have an understanding of schedule or opponents or how many minutes someone's getting. Like, I think those things are all part of the sport that can be interesting. But as a conversation, it's dull.
I guess so,
People
right?
just chatting about like, oh, I don't know if KD's going to get his 25. Oh, he did. Nice.
I have an adjacent thought to this. Recently, I don't go out as much as I used to, and so I try to like maximize my nights. But recently, I've been running up into this issue where people want to start long conversations that take a lot of thought that I do not want to talk about. And I'm just like, I cannot spend the next 15 minutes talking about Kyrie Irving, man. Like, I just don't want to do it. And then I'm like, ooh, I'm done with that conversation. Move down the bar, and someone's like, hey, you see that Kyrie Irving thing? I'm like, I really like you. I just cannot talk about this anymore. It's just like, not that it's not interesting, not that I don't like this person. There's just like, there's these ideas like you cannot talk about someone's weight. You cannot talk about how old someone is. You never talk about the weather, directions of how people got there. Like, oh, I took that intersection. Oh, there's traffic there. There's certain things you don't like. How much money do you make? You just don't talk about certain things. I want there to be a better way to indicate to somebody where I'm just like, I don't want to talk about Elon Musk. It's like, why? Do you hate him? I'm like, here we go. We're talking about him, Have you run into
Where do you
this?
fall? No, I know what you mean. Yes, people want to talk Ben Simmons, and I am happy to indulge.
Yeah. Last night, I
I
turned
get to
blank.
do another Ben Simmons conversation. I'm in.
Yeah, last night I turned blank. I saw an acquaintance that I hadn't seen in years, and he's a basketball head, and he does not enjoy and beer. And I was ready to go home. I was tired. I just wanted to say hi to one more person and just like skedaddle. And he was like, so, name me your top 10 players of all time. I'm like, dude, I cannot do this. And I think I mumbled something about Manu Ginobili and Kobe Bryant. And it set off this whole thing where I'm like, I do not want to talk about this. You should purchase this book called The Joy of Basketball that spells it out clear as day, man. Available at all the finest booksellers.
That's wise. From the mouths of babes to your ears. There are certain conversations that I avoid, and I understand like weather. It's the most classic small talk, whatever. It's not interesting when people bring it up, but I'm fine with it in passing. You walk by someone, hot enough for you? I'm walking here. Like
Some Qatar-esque
Sure.
conversation. Yeah.
oh, hot as the Dickens.
The pitch hot enough for you?
But the meeting someone and asking what they do, not really a fan of that. And I know that's a subject of some debate where people are like, yeah, but people spend a lot of time at their job. Like, this is a large component of who they are. It's a totally valid question to ask. I think it's valid, but I don't ask it, if that makes sense. I very, 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 very rarely ask people what they do for a living, but I don't think it's a social faux pas. That's French.
Oh, oui. I get buckets, is what you answer every time. I make baskets.
Yeah, I'm a proper bin man.
Have you met a bin man in socially ever?
A bin man, for those unacquainted, here we'd call them a garbage man or a sanitation worker, depending on how
Something you
progressive-
denied the existence of in a previous Perfect Pod.
Yeah. They don't exist.
Well, show me one if they exist. Just show me.
Yeah, I think. Remember, Heron Preston did a collaboration with the sanitation department.
Yeah,
There was a little party that was at this like salt depot that they have along. I think it was along the west side, maybe. It was kind of interesting. There's this big structure with this just outrageously large pile of salt.
yeah, I know.
And the event was there, and there were guys in sanitation gear all over the place. And I think it was upcycled Heron Preston stuff. That he was taking their old uniforms and rebuilding them, or they were inspired by it. But it was I don't know if you would see that today, or maybe you would. It could have been ahead of its time. But it was this like collaboration for workwear with the New York City Sanitation Department and Heron Preston, which is kind of a luxury streetwear brand, I guess
Sure.
call it, but popular with NBA players and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's an artist doing like a residency in the sanitation department, like building one of them that was featured in the New York Times. And like there's always like creative people who dabble in this idea. It's always interesting, right? Because like as soon as you get thinking about it in New York City, it's like a huge part of not only the city, but the economy of it is interesting. Like a lot of it is mob related, a lot of it is privatized, which is interesting. Not all of it, but a lot of the garbage pickups are like companies that work for profit, and the city hires them, and then you kind of roundabout work with them and not the city itself. And it turns into some kind of like some World Cup ass thing, like Seth Blatter thing, where it's just like, oh, it's a simple thing that we're experiencing, a footy match, garbage getting picked up, but it's actually a really complex structure of like money changing hands. And I don't know, it is something that I think is deeply not only New York but American. It was just like, how do we complicate these things, and how do we add many middlemen to something as simple as garbage removal?
I'm still kind of unclear on what they were proposing the other day about putting out garbage certain days of the week, that we're not supposed to just carry garbage out when the bag is full. I'm like, that it requires a total readjustment of my personal garbage strategy. I go with the when the bag is full or starts smelling bad, I tie it up and take it outside.
Well, you have a super, right? Like the super has to do the next step, which is bringing it to the street. You don't put your garbage out on the street. You put it in the basement or something,
No,
right?
I put it in the trash cans in front of the building, and then they're then moved to the curb
Yeah.
on garbage day.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's every other day usually, and none on the weekends. And now your boy, the sausage king, the salmon sire, Mayor Adams, is saying that he wants garbage to get put out at 8 p.m. because of rats, which makes sense. But it sucks because not many people are doing stuff at 8 p.m. Either like home stuff.
Well,
at
I
8
just,
p.m.
well, what I mean is, does he want citizens to bring their trash from their apartments down at 8 p.m., or does he want people to move?
This is for the supers. The supers only. The last person in that process brings it to the curb after 8 p.m.
My thing though is that I feel like rats are still able to get into cans and garbage wherever. What is it? I don't see the difference.
Well, I kind of like it because it's sort of like shot selection in a basketball game. It's like, we have a rat problem. He's like, what if we take garbage off the streets for 4 more hours every day? There's garbage pickup. And like, that'll work. That's 4 less hours of the potential of rats. He's like, good.
I just don't see us triumphing over these rats. I feel like the war has been lost.
The war has been lost. But you can, like the Knicks, you can try to get better. If you're not trying to get better, then what are we doing?
I don't really have a problem with rats though. Gotta be honest.
I like them. They're survivors. They're cool. I know everyone says their tails are gross, but they're fine.
I mean, they're little scavengers, but they're smart. Mm-hmm. They're kind of cute in a
I love rodents.
rodent-ass way.
Yeah, they're cool. Something that always confused me was when people would be like, squirrels are just rats with furry tails. And I'm like, well, squirrels eat nuts. They're nuts for nuts. Rats are just a product of our filth. So if a rat is going through a bunch of garbage, that garbage is disgusting, and we've kind of created it, right? Like, what do rats in the pasture eat? Other rats? Dead stuff?
Yeah, I feel like they'd be trying to get into birds' nests and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Maybe they eat some bugs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the squirrels thing, I don't get that. That just sounds like someone who
Squirrel
doesn't
hater.
Yeah, who just hates on squirrels for no reason at all.
I mean,
My doves are gone from my window, but a squirrel is out there hanging out a lot now.
squirrels are cool. Did the squirrel eat the doves?
No, the doves, I saw them go through the full process. I saw them as eggs. They grew, and they were these little
Wait, actual
fuzzy
doves?
little, yeah, real doves, not pigeons, doves. And they built a nest. They went through the whole thing, and it was right outside my window on my fire escape. It was quite charming. And then I saw them learning to fly. And every now and then I'll see one of the doves around. And now at this point, I can't really tell the difference between the adults and the younger ones. Mm-hmm. But they're still hanging out. I would hope that they come back and do this again in the spring, because it was quite nice.
Wow, that's surprising. I have not heard of that. Usually it's a pigeon story. Pigeons, man. My friend had a nest of pigeons like on top of his alleyway air conditioner, his window unit. And he called the city. It was just like, hey, I have like an infestation of pigeons. And they're like, we don't do any of that stuff. You either have to call a private company to get rid of them, or you have to do it. He's like, I have to do this? And they're like, we do not touch it. So he had to put on a hazmat suit and go and blast away all these pigeons. He was traumatized. He still talks about it. This was 10 years ago.
How did he blast them away?
I think he got a power washer. Ooh, I think he bagged them and power washed the whole thing. I think he like tried to scurry as many away. He tried to do this in an ethical way. He waited until they were big enough to maybe like they weren't chicks and they can fly away, and he shooed them away and like sprayed down the whole area, which was quite a traumatic experience.
Yeah, there were some pigeons on my old roof, and you'd hear them cooing, and they were chirping and doing pigeon stuff, and it actually was quite loud and annoying.
Yeah.
And then they would poop all over the windowsills. Like, I mean, they're a little pestilent, no doubt about it.
What's up with those pigeon dunks? Like, were those I'm not a sneakerhead, but like, were those like the most sought after dunk? Like something special happened with those, like the Jeff Staple pigeon dunks, right?
Yeah, I remember when he put them out. I
Me
forget
too.
the exact color scheme, but I think they were like maybe brown and gray and pink, right?
Yeah, gray and pink with little pigeon where the thing usually is.
Well, there was kind of a riot when they were released, right? I believe that there was people lined up along Orchard, right?
I remember, yeah, the Staple shop with those little chairs in the window.
Yeah, I think there was a line for it, and I think it was the pigeon, and kind of chaos broke out. I don't know if something got broken or whatnot, and then for some reason they became incredibly sought after. I remember seeing an interview with Killer Mike, and he's like, "My grail is like
Yeah,
the pigeon dunks."
this is what I'm talking about. Like,
I think PJ Tucker said that one time too.
yeah, I think I remember seeing someone posting like an oral history of the pigeon dunk. I'm like, what the hell? Is this the most famous nerd shoe ever?
I mean, I'm looking right now on
How
on
much?
Goat.
Let me guess. A size 9, does it go for $2,500?
I don't know what size this is, but they're asking for 27.
Damn.
Ooh, the black one, Nike Jeff Staple. Shout out to Jeff. Dunk Low Pro SB, Black Pigeon, 10,000.
Jesus. Okay, fair
Nike
enough.
Jeff Staple, Dunk
Yeah.
Low Pro SB, Panda Pigeon, 1,400. Well, those are Nike Dunk Low Pro SB, Jeff Staple Pigeon, the OG, 30,000.
Oh, damn. God damn it. Like, I remember, I think someone from the Staple shop was just like, come by, I'll give you a pair of these. And I'm like, no, I wear Wallabies only with no socks and Nick shorts. That's all I do.
Just don't go with a pair of Knicks.
It's too much.
Come
It's
on,
too
be
sporty.
serious.
Too sporty. Yeah, I wear my sports with my shorts, not on my feet. But also I look very young. So if I wore sneakers like that, I would look even younger. But like in a not good way. But I remember someone at that shop was like, "Come on over the night before. I'll hook you up with a pair." Should have taken it, flipped them in 2022, and gone to a Christmas restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, if you just knew that you could wait a decade, 2 decades, and sell it on a website for auctions,
Did
you'd be a wealthy man.
did you see that thing on Twitter that was trending? That was like, what would you have done when you were 13? If you can go back in time and tell your 13-year-old self to do something, what would it be? And it went trending because everyone said buy Apple stock. and you know, that was a strange answer, I think, but everyone started replying with that. And it got me to think, like, what are the things that I regret not doing? Obviously, like, there's expensive paintings that I've passed up that turned into like $1 million paintings, which kind of drives me nuts even thinking about it. But I would never flip them, right? So if this painting has been, I almost bought this painting of my buddy. He was working in his mom's old antique shop in Coney Island, and I went down there. I went to school with him, and I was like, I love it, man. Can I buy this like half done? And it was $5,000, and I was just like, I'll pay you in installments. Who do I talk to? And he was like, well, I actually have like 2 collectors in mind for this painting. So I want to see if they want to buy it. And if I'm in a pinch, I'll come back to you. But you're not a collector. You're my friend. So I don't want to sell it to you. It's been flipped twice. And I think the last time was $1 million. Insane.
But to your point, you wouldn't have flipped it.
I would not have
Saying there
flipped
were
it. Yeah.
the $1 million, and you being friends with that guy, I think you would sort of be like morally bound to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling this. Can I
for
sell
sure.
it back to you?" Right?
For sure. Yeah. Or the dealer. And he was smart.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
He was smart because if I would have bought one of these 5 paintings that were going into his first show, I would have depressed the value of his market. Not that he wanted his market to go to $1 million, but if it's just sitting in my living room, peering over as I rummage through my refrigerator, it's kind of dead. It doesn't do anything except make me happy. So he wanted it to be something that was more alive, and selling it to me would not accomplish that.
Yeah, what are your feelings on that? Because I think there's an argument that, you know, people buying great works of art and just keeping them at their house, there's an element of depriving the public of great work.
I mean,
But
Jerry
at the
Saltz.
same time,
Yeah.
yeah, at this argument, but at the same time, these paintings are being produced for sale to private collectors. I could see if it was being bought by galleries, but a lot of these are being bought by people who want them for their house. And as you said, a lot of them appreciate value. Is there a responsibility to, you know, let the people see these like masterworks,
Nope.
especially ones that
Nope.
you're like no,
Nope.
no
It's-
way, no way.
It belongs to you. You own it. There's no list of demands. There's no 6 things that you must do as an art collector. It'd be cool if people could see it, but I think as soon as a collector owns it, it belongs to them. They could burn it, they can draw on top of it, it just doesn't matter. I cannot believe that art is that precious. Like, you know, all these protesters are like putting mashed potatoes and tomato soup on these famous artworks to you know, to say something, and it's working because we're talking about it. But I don't think an image is that valuable as some other people, mostly because I grew up most of my life with the internet.
I think someone could also make the argument that, like, there are certain works that people need to see in real life.
Is that
Other ones,
really?
you're saying, no, I mean, I still could make that argument. Like,
Yeah.
you just have to see, I don't know,
Right.
Winged Victory. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Guernica, seeing a photo of it, not the same. It's fucking huge. And I'll be like, that's true. Guernica is a different experience.
I would like
You
to see
are
Guernica.
when you're at the gallery there in Madrid,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just an enormous and powerful work that's not as impressive when you like look at a JPEG of it.
Sure.
Yeah, there it is. Look at the bull. Look at him go. That's cool. But when you see it that big, it is spectacular, and I think
Yeah.
that's valid. But for the most part, it's like, all right, this is a painting by like Goya.
Yeah.
All right, I'm thinking of the galleries that are on there. Like, that's cool. It's him, and there's some nobility there, and it's pretty big. But you can sort of look at that on your phone and get the general premise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound cynical. I think art should be expensive. There's no artwork that is too expensive. I think it's properly rated. I also think, like, to your point, the most breathtaking experience I've had seeing an artwork is maybe Mark Rothko's like Four Seasons paintings. I've gotten to see that twice in London. These are the paintings he made for the Four Seasons, and they were too sad, and they didn't want to hang them. So they have it installed, I believe, at the Tate, in a room, like, all together, and they're just like some of the saddest artworks I've ever seen. And Mark Rothko's whole story is tragic, but like, that was amazing. I don't think you can experience that on a screen or in a book at all. But that said, there's something great about, like, I've never seen Guernica in person. I'd like to, but I love that painting, and I've only seen like a photograph or a digital version of it, and it's still amazing.
Totally. And again, a lot of this we're just talking about scale, right? You know, when you look at a Rothko and you're like, this is a brown box. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's little gradients around the edges. Mm-hmm. But when you see it in person, it is a different experience. I think that's valid. But that's kind of what we're talking about. That if someone's like, hey, I have a projector and I'm going to put an image up on my wall, like, okay, now you're getting a little bit closer. You're going to project an image of that Rothko, and it's going to be the same height as the original one. Like, you're starting to get the experience a little.
Yeah, I've always been this way, even as a kid, right? Like, would you like to go to the Knicks game? I'm like, well, I can just watch it on my TV, and that's cool because I get to hear Marv Albert or Mike Breen. If I go to the game, I can't hear them, and I can't like make a snack or use the bathroom whenever I feel like it. It's like, thanks, but no thanks, you know. And I've never been like an IRL guy per se, but I can't say that I've never been to a game and not been astonished, you know. Like, I've gotten to see some of these players play in my life, like LeBron James, and I'm like, oh damn, that was crazy. It's like, do you want to go again? I'm like, not really. I don't know. I've always been partial to like the experience that you can create. Maybe this is the theme of the show, this perfect pod. It's like, I don't want to share this experience with that many people, whether that be eating, whether that be watching a game or an artwork. I think it's more private.
I feel like for basketball, the snobby part of me is that in bad seats, I'd probably rather watch it at home, unless it's a really special game.
You are a snob, but I agree.
I'm saying, I'm
Yeah,
acknowledging
I
this is
agree.
snobby. I mean, if you're up there in the rafters and the nosebleeds, you're like, all right, it's cool, but I have to want to be there for like the energy of it. Because the experience of watching a game from that high up, it's a little
Sucks. Yeah. You end up
Yeah,
watching.
I mean, I'm saying the experience can be fun. I saw Steph Curry, the only time I've ever seen him live, and those were the tickets that were available, and I had a great time watching him. But it was really high up there. But it was fun because it was exciting to see him play and seeing people's response to that. But as a basketball experience, like watching the game, man, these guys are about the size of ants.
I mean, I don't believe in the idea of dystopia. I just don't think it's valuable to me to think about. But I love going to a game and having like so seats and just watching on the Jumbotron. I'm just like, my head is up. I'm watching the screen. And these guys, these tiny players a million miles away, are running around doing these incredible things. And I'm just watching the TV in MSG.
I have not been to a football game in a really, really long time. But I think I sat like first or second row at a Giants game, and you're still far away.
Football's tough. The pitch is large. American football.
Yeah, and because you're lower, you know, your angle is kind of tougher. So even though these were really good seats, they were like, you know, midfield, 50-yard line, first or second row, I forget. Excellent seats. But when they'd be running down the sideline, you're just watching at the Jumbotron.
Yeah. Well, it's like with TV, we consume these things edited, bite-sized, zoom in, zoom out. It's great, right? It's interactive, kind of. You're not doing it, but there's a director of the show producing this experience for you. And it's kind of like being online on the NewYorkTimes.com instead of having the New York Times in front of you, printed on paper. And I just think it's a better solution to have a system like the internet through a browser or watching on TV. It's just, when you're there, it's a totally different thing, right? It's like eating in the kitchen of a restaurant or eating in the dining room, or the same.
Yeah, I think that's true. But this idea of the perfect pod here, that some things are best experienced in solitude, I think that's there are cases where that's true.
Right.
But are we going down this slippery slope that ends up with like incels or the young men in Japan who feel as if they've been like ostracized by society and they just kind of have a digital only existence, or the people we've been talking about on the pod in recent weeks and other perfect podcasts about how they're like, how do you make friends? Like, are you can you be too solitary, like a Unabomber, for example?
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, we sat down to dinner yesterday. I had missed
There is
time.
nothing like making a bomb by yourself in a shack. It's not the same when you're in a large, say, you know, hideout, safe house with a bunch of bomb makers. It's a different thing.
But like, yeah, okay. So yesterday we were having dinner. We had planned this to meet up at a certain time, and I mistimed my jump um, at tip off, and I was early. I was a few minutes early. Hey man, I don't have much time in my life these days because of family stuff. So like, I was happy to have been a bit early, and I walked around this neighborhood, the East Village, and I've been walking around there my whole life. And it occurred to me, it felt like Thanksgiving already. When I left the house, I thought it was Monday. When I found myself out, I was like, oh, it feels like everyone's gone. Like the city has turned over as it does every time Thanksgiving or Christmas rolls up. And I sat down at the table and I was talking to our buddy, and I was like, I had a nice kind of walk around. I grabbed a slice, I looked in some windows, and like this time of year is so melancholy to me, always. And he was like, melancholy? This is great. Look, we're here. Like, we're all together. We're going to have some amazing food. We're going to have a flight of chartreuse. It's going to be amazing. And it had, maybe that's why we're making this perfect pod today. I feel like this weird holiday feeling is, to me, best experienced in solitary, in a solitary way. And it does lead into some like, how do I make friends, incel stuff. And then our other friend is like, don't call me, I'll be eating at the bar alone, I do not want to see you, I've been looking forward to this all month.
The idea, though, that you're touching on there about the moroseness of the holidays, of
Or the
feast
romance.
season, as they
Yeah.
call it,
Yeah,
it is a time for suicide. Like,
for sure.
I don't mean to suggest that people should be committing suicide. I am saying it is a time when statistically it happens. And there is something about holidays that clearly exerts a different energy and different pressure on people.
Right,
And
it's a
whether
mirror.
that
It
takes
just
the
shows
place-
you what you have. Yeah, totally.
Right. And if you're someone who's like, I want something different. I want what I thought I deserved, like a huge Christmas tree and like all these things, this idealized version of feast season, and I don't have that. I could see how that would be grim. And I think you're talking about some of that. But also, are you talking about like New York City and this idea of melancholia? Because there just aren't that many people there. Is it the idea of this city that is partially full?
Right. I mean, it's a little bit it's a little bit that globs onto the whole thing, right? Like, I think of it in terms of romance. It's just like, if your brain, you can watch a last minute shot, like Luka could hit a last second shot to win the game, and it's amazing, it's thrilling. You're in the crowd screaming, and then you go home and then you turn it into like something romantic, right? Being like, oh my God, that was the greatest shot I've ever seen. It reminds me of another thing that I'll never forget. Like, I want to tell somebody about this, but elaborate more on it, and put flowers around it, and retell the story in even better way. And I think like some of these things, like games, food, art, the holidays, it's like, in order to share this experience with more than one person, you have to kind of create your own point of view. And if you don't concentrate on your own experience, you cannot create this romance, right? Whatever. Like, telling somebody about something with excitement, to me, is romantic, I really love that stuff. So that's how I experience like some of the holidays. Like, I'm blessed to be sitting with you guys, having dinner, go back to my family. I have cats. I have food in my fridge. I am psyched. But still, in order to process it, you gotta do some of it alone, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what I didn't do alone.
Oh God.
I went to Barclays Center the other day
That's right.
with 400 of my compatriots. We had
You were head to toe in purple.
we had our purple tunics on, our purple merch lined up. We chanted. We had a big day over there, celebrating the return of Kyrie Irving.
Wow.
I'm joking about some of this, but I was there at Barclays Center. I will say these guys were coordinated by the color of their tunics, and they were coordinated in their chants. They were not shying away from Kyrie's statements. They were leaning into them. And all I could think about was how dumb this entire thing is. How mismanaged by all parties that we ended up with 400 guys outside of a basketball game yelling about the Jews and slave ships and being the true Hebrews. And almost kind of to what we were saying before, like, how do you explain this to a kid? So, what had happened here, just like, this is so weird. But also, I was at the Kyrie game where people were protesting the vax policies at. Like, Kyrie is just generating real madness outside of Barclays Center on multiple occasions. Like, it's just funny. This is no commentary on things that have been said or any of those policies or his beliefs. Just like, here's Kyrie Irving, who just single-handedly causes demonstrations outside of the stadium on an annual basis.
It was a striking image, and it's been well documented. It was planned. There was a peaceful march. It was coordinated. It was all uniform, as you said. But it was such a striking image to see that and remember that that was also the location of ground zero for Black Lives Matters, that protest, right? And it is the same place again. It is in front of Barclays Center, and a much different vibe, to say the least. And like, I agree it's stupid. It's one of these things that like, I do not want to talk about that much because, right, explain this to a 5-year-old. I'd just be like, there's this book that can be read a few different ways.
So there's these lost tribes.
And then there's wars, and people fight about what's in this book. It's like, well, what does the book say? It's like, well, it tells us how to be good and what happens after we're dead. It's just like, this sounds like an important book. I'm like, it is. Everything is about this book. Yeah. Is there more of these books? I'm like, there's one. And the other countries or religions have their own, but this one belongs to this country.
There's another religion, and they only use half of the book.
That's right. And it's not the joy of basketball.
They only use half the joy of basketball. They use A through M.
Yeah.
They're really into that stuff. Once you get into the P's, they have some real questions about Kristaps Porzingis, if being the chosen one and the Son of God.
Yeah. I mean, so what was the vibe? Did you?
What was it? The vibe. The vibe was. I mean, it was peaceful, but there was an orator, and he was, saying stuff like, we are the black people are the true Jews. I mean, that's what he was saying.
And these are not 5%ers. This is a different group of people.
Yeah, they were not 5%ers, from my understanding. They may be overlapping. They had their organization's name on their shirt. We saw some of their Instagram posts where they were calling this the Barclays Blitz, which I would
terrible phrase. I hate it.
Poor taste.
Yeah.
And had a menorah in the middle of Blitz.
Terrible.
I mean, Andrew, I typically like your graphic design, but this was not. This is not on par with the merch that you put out.
Trace, drag into Photoshop, multiply image.
You did incredible stuff, with the driving collection. We've got some crew necks in the store. Masterful, no pun intended.
And just because I give the
your
interns
Blitz
less,
with the menorah. Yeah.
The interns got out of the cage last night. What can I say, man? They went gruel crazy a little bit. They're back in the cage now.
But the vibe over there was, honestly, I thought it was entertaining. I was like Jaylen Brown, like energy. There's something's going on here. I don't agree with the ideas. It was just interesting. I don't know. I mean, there was good coordinated chants. People were coming out of the subway into this mix where people were chanting and they had microphones and there were people in lines everywhere, and they were kind of filing down along by like the Qatar Airways VIP entrance in a long line,
Qatar.
and every now and then they would Qatar.
Cutter.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was interesting, and then you went inside and watched a basketball game.
Right. I mean,
And what they saw was
Ben
the
Simmons
return
going
of the
off.
king. The king is back.
I mean, I agree. Like, it was a holiday vibe last night, and I got to talk about Kyrie Irving reluctantly 4 times, right? Like, and I'm exhausted by this. I agree. Like, it is, as a human being on Earth, it is interesting at the very least to see a different point of view than your own, and to see optically also striking, right? They were all in a certain color. They were all telling you one unified thing together. Cool. Like, whoa, right? And I hate those ideas. I don't live by those ideas, but I'm also not scared of those ideas, right? We've talked about this on the pod twice already in perfect ways. Like, this is even more perfect if you can even fathom. But, like, these ideas to me suck, but also it's hard for me to go there because it's what they believe in their hearts, right? So if another human being believes in this thing so much, it's my duty to kind of like try to understand where they're coming from, not believe what they believe.
I think that, and there's also, I see what you're saying, and I think there's also this part of this specific conversation where they have a belief that I disagree with. They're operating in a revisionist history that they are tailoring to a concept, and the concept is, to me, I get why this occurs. The history of America and the slavery and like white supremacy and the Bible, like these things are all cohering in angular ways, and this is just one of the things that has resulted from that. Mm-hmm. But also, this didn't have to all occur. If you are this group, Kyrie did put you in this position, but so did the Nets. So did the media. Like, everyone kind of came together to make this thing that should not have been this big into this environment outside of Barclays. And that was kind of why I was chuckling at the whole situation. Not because I have any sympathy for their anti-Semitic messaging, but just that, like, everybody bungled this, and here we are. I saw there was multiple new articles about Kyrie again today. I'm like,
Of course.
Hey, can we just focus on Jaylen Brown?
Can we talk about the Jaylen
Boston's
Brown
got
in
what?
the room?
They won 8 or 9 in a row. He's playing well. What about Jaylen Brown? Media, sports media, fixated on the former Celtic who saged their residence and stomped on Lucky. Jaylen Brown. He thought it was a fraternity.
Well, at least
Jaylen Brown, who wears number 7. Supreme mathematics. God.
I know this is unusual because Jaylen Brown before this, was a team player. He got vaxxed up. He took the responsibility of him as a citizen during a COVID crisis.
Global pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird how we pick our villains, and that's where it turns into a farce. To your point, it turns
Interesting that he seems to believe in all the things that Kyrie does, perhaps even more concretely.
Yeah.
And yet, the BMM. Let's just not talk about that when it's Jaylen Brown. Let's not talk about when Brad Stevens knew about what happened with Udoka. Let's not talk about what Udoka actually did. Let's just leave those alone. And then the Nets talk about hiring Udoka. Wow, there is no bottom. The moral compass spinning on this disgusting Brooklyn organization. I'm like, you're still paying him, my dudes. Like, he's still on contract. You didn't fire him.
Yeah. I think when the Kyrie stuff started, there was it came off of the whole Kanye Psycho, where everyone just knew exactly what to say because Kanye's done this before. We're songbirds who know how to talk about this with these certain people. And the amount of Schadenfreude attached to the Kyrie thing was real. To your point, the BMM, podcasts, articles, bars, everyone, bars where you get N beer, not like rapping bars. Like, you would hear people know exactly what to say about Kyrie and disparaging him, and someone like Joseph Tsai even adding to that, his employer. And then we talked about this on the pod. It was, eventually I was like, if we talk long enough, we're going to realize we're in a corner, because there's things that people believe, and we want to support these people because they are our neighbors and people on earth that we have to get along with, hopefully, if we want to be like better than yesterday. But these people don't have ideas that coincide with some of our ideas. And pretty soon we're going to realize our Schadenfreude is going to be short-lived because it's not fucking funny. Or is it, right? When you see this thing, it's just like, there is a comical tone to our lives in general. Everything is funny to me. And I agree with you. It's like at some point you're like, is this satire? What the hell is happening?
And I will concede that, how do I say this?
Be careful. Be careful.
I know. I'm trying to say this carefully. Like, I get very upset by like police brutality.
As you should.
Like, I'm saying that really fucking gets me annoyed. Like, I think it's awful. I think our law enforcement system in America is needs a rehaul. That is something that personally really bothers me, and it's not something that I would really make jokes about.
God damn! Do I have to take down my Blue Lives Matters flags? Ugh, I did not.
But
know
you know what I'm saying here. Like,
yeah.
that to me is like a serious issue.
Yep, I hear you.
What Kyrie thinks does not fall into that category to me. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. This is right. Kyrie's beliefs, and yes, I understand that him spreading these ideas to other people can make other people have these things, and down the road that can cause something. I'm with you. But when I look at like drinking water in Jackson, Mississippi, I'm like, that's some fucked up shit.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring it to
this whole situation is to me is just a little different. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, in its simplest form, it's like if your 5-year-old nephew was like, Uncle Ben, what is Christmas? And you're like, well, we're celebrating this damn book again, and we, it's cool that we get together and we get to hang out.
Joy of basketball. Yes.
Yeah, it's about the letter Z now. Jesus. But it sounds ridiculous when you say it, right? When you describe what Christmas is. Because it's not just a time where everyone takes a much-needed rest and time with family, time to eat over the sink, whatever. But there are, like, I've never thought Christmas was that important. I love the days off from work and stuff. But, like, I don't believe any of these ideas, Like, in my heart, I can respect them and I observe them. But to just dismiss what someone like Jaylen Brown thinks is like too simple. If we're doing this, I agree too. This is not something I think about a lot, but it's something that when it comes up, I'm like, let's try to figure this out together. It deserves that amount of attention. But I quickly come to the point where I'm like, I am not emotionally equipped to discuss this stuff, because it's about what people believe in their hearts, right?
Or not even.
Or not.
It's
sure.
what people maybe believe in an ambient sense, or people just kind of got confused about, or something that Kyrie saw on YouTube, went down a wormhole and said, all right, there's some stuff here that I'm into. Not necessarily the stuff that's hyper offensive.
Yeah.
But I like some of these other concepts.
Sure.
I don't know. Again, I'm not here to minimize Kyrie's stuff. I just feel like the scale of the attention did not make a lot of sense to me. The whole thing being this massive story that was a national news cycle issue. Just it did not strike me as warranting that.
It's frustrating because everything's a damn trap, right? I remember, speaking of Joseph Tsai, I remember when the Hong Kong situation happened, right? And there was a protest, I believe it was the Brooklyn Bridge, of people pro Hong Kong. And it, by accident, ran into another Chinese protest about the genocide of the Uyghurs. And it was two parties who both wanted, in my opinion, like good things, but directly opposed. So like if you're like Chinese, Hong Kong should have its independence, or like the way the government has treated these cities and potentially Taiwan is antiquated and barbaric. And someone else comes and be like, but you guys are supporting the genocide of a whole people. And it's just like, I find that we've gotten so good at arguing. I mean, we were hanging out with somebody who had a law book yesterday, and every time we got into a discussion, he would break out his law book, which was extremely funny. But it's
legal over here.
Yeah, it's with everything, and it's Twitter, it's whatever. Our capacity to frame an argument is so good. At some point when the Kyrie Irving thing started, I'm like, we're in trouble here. This will, in a week, this is going to be very difficult to talk about. And I think we're there.
Yeah. I can't believe we still managed to talk about it, but we did. That's why we're so good at this. We managed to wring more material out of the whole sordid saga. But anyway, yeah, I was there that night. And the real story, the one for the heads. Simo the Savage has returned. Well, look, let's take a little victory lap here. Not that he is fully back, not that he has reclaimed his past glory as a top 5 player in the league, which I feel like there were certain segments of prior years he was that good of a player. He's not there yet. But
I love defense.
A month ago, we said, in 2021, there was a very similar set of circumstances where he was coming back from a long layoff and injuries, new coach, and he looked kind of like this, at least early in the season. He was not looking for his own shot. He was not finishing at the rim. He looked slower. And my take was, look, if we've seen this before, let's give him a month. And kind of on that calendar schedule, he started looking good again a month into the year. So hopefully back, knee, whatever ails him, it can be behind him and he's comfortable playing again. He looks good. I don't think he has quite the explosiveness that used to be there in terms of his like side-to-side quickness. He's fast, but he doesn't quite have that like thermonuclear burst that he used to have.
Yeah.
When he's going to the rim, he's not necessarily going to like just like yoke on people through traffic, but he looked good. I mean, the guy has shot over 80% in his last 3 games. He's getting layups. He looks more mobile, getting to boards. All in all, that was very encouraging Ben Simmons game.
It was thrilling, man. And I think it's going to be a process. I think it was right. When you say victory lap, we've been kind of smirking through this, but not without trepidation, because I think me and you have always known he is a very talented basketball player who is young and just not ready to play yet. And that's a different debate, but he was not ready to play. He skipped a year. And it takes a while to get back up to speed. And the smirking comes in where I'm like, if he just gets reps, he will become good again. I have no doubt about this. The question is if he can get reps.
My concern was also just like knees and backs are tricky.
He got 2 vertebrae infused together, I believe. I can't even walk up my steps without Hoka recovery slides.
but yeah, no, that my concern is his health, and I don't know. He doesn't look fully back to where he was at
60%.
His most spry.
Yeah,
but he looked good and he's effective. One thing I liked about this game, and let me put it like this: when Doc Rivers is coaching the Sixers, and I think of things that he could try. These might not be that inventive. They might be pretty obvious. But just ideas like, you know what? Doc should try doing this. They don't happen. Like, it just doesn't happen. They should try this lineup. They won't.
Right.
It just doesn't occur.
Right.
And that's a testament to Doc's faith in his convictions and his worldview. He sticks to it. What I've kind of enjoyed about paying more attention to the Nets than I normally do is that they were playing Clax and Simmons together. It didn't work, and they stopped. I'm like, you know, if Doc had done this with Dwight Howard, just made that decision, they don't go on the court together, we could be talking about a different set of circumstances. But Doc wouldn't change. And I like that the Nets have done that. Now, I don't know enough about how Jacque Vaughn is going to coach on the line. Maybe he will try to put those two non-shooters on the floor together just to get them more minutes. Maybe he will, and maybe it'll fail. Yeah. But so far, I've liked that. And another thing that came to mind was when Simmons was struggling, I was like, you know what? I wish the Nets players would just get him the ball after rebounds right away.
Oh, they're doing
They don't
that.
need Royce to bring it up. They don't need KD to bring it up. They don't need Kyrie to bring it up. They don't need Curry to bring it up. Curry's kind of the only one who doesn't give it to him, which is kind of funny. Like, Curry won't get a rebound and quickly kick it to Simmons most of the time. He just kind of brings it up himself. But the other guys have started doing that, and that was kind of what I wanted to see. I was like, just give him the ball and let him start running. Let the guy run around. You know, he doesn't need to be scoring a lot. He doesn't need to be come up with tons of dimes, but he needs to be running around with the ball. And I thought they did a better job of that. And there were a couple plays that I saw sort of the platonic ideal of what I want him to do as a stretch five, where someone else got the rebound, gave it to him, and he went flying up the court and actually ran past Steven Adams, who was guarding him and who had his back to him. And I'm like, that's the one. That's the play I want to see. Simmons just basically running down the guys who are guarding him and flying past them, because then you can't crash the glass with enthusiasm.
Right.
Then
He
you can't
creates a
do a
matchup.
lot of the stuff that you want to do.
Yeah, he creates an issue where the defense doesn't know who to pick up. The Simmons discussion to me is exhausting, and we're just waiting for something to happen, and it's starting to happen, which is exciting. I remember years ago when Simmons was balling and he was already controversial, but maybe in his peak, I said the way to diffuse the boredom of the Simmons conversation is he was on his way to being a Hall of Famer. And I know that sounds strange after everything that happens, but there's not many players that were an all-star 3 times out of their first 4 years. Like, it was going to happen, and then everything kind of derailed, and that's a whole different story. And now my whole framing of him is different, being like, okay, we have to recalibrate. He just has to get back up to speed now, because he is that good. I don't think his skills have diminished, the skills I love of his, which is your point, the way he sees the court, his physical abilities, the matchup issues he introduces to the game. But at this point, like, I take 2 extremes. I'm like, I don't want to think about it. I just want to eventually see it by like 2023 January. Okay, we can start talking if he can play this month. And then another one is an overarching thing, being like, we're the moving target as fans. Ben Simmons has kind of always been the same. He just got hurt. But our kind of framing of him has changed because of boredom or frustration.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. 100%. You are correct. You are right. I think you can look at his career trajectory and say, this guy was headed for the Hall of Fame, and then he's had 2 injuries. And yes, he sat out a year of his own volition, no doubt about that. And that's a mark against him in terms of missing a year of his career. But overall, it's been a pretty steady incline. And I was talking with someone, one of these conversations, someone that I'd never spoken to about basketball, and he was talking about Simmons. And he was kind of like, I knew that guy sucked. I'm like, well,
What?
Well, but was he rookie of the year, multiple time All Star, All NBA,
Led the league in
All NBA
steals.
defense, DPOY candidate, all this stuff? I'm like, that would mean that he was headed for the Hall of Fame. The guy was like, well, yeah.
Right.
So you knew the guy who's headed for the Hall of Fame. You knew he always sucked, and he was like, I just wanted him to have a jump shot. I'm like, I get it. Let's just clarify what your issue is.
Yeah.
It wasn't. let's just talk about this and just tell me your gripes, and we can move along. Anyway, the biggest issue right now is that the Sixers are just stuck in the smoke, going down for the vaunted return to Philly, hostile environment.
It's gonna be fun.
Joe,
He doesn't want that
Tobias,
Yuta smoke.
Harden, they don't want smoke with Yuta.
Yeah.
They are running at top speed away from the grind.
Yo, Yuta is
No
shooting
no
the lights
piece
out.
of Yuta.
You don't want a piece of Yuta. Watanabe.
Yeah, but a bummer though.
Watanabe.
Like Simmons didn't play the first time last season because of his injury, and then this time Joe is not playing because of his injury, and then Joe and Harden both sat out in the preseason game ducking smoke. So we now have 3 opportunities for these guys to play, and it's never happened.
Play the game,
But
coward.
conceivably, at some time it will.
Yeah. I mean, Simmons' interview.
Dude,
about-
imagine. Wait, sorry though. Imagine how Simmons would get fucking roasted if he's like, "Oh, I'm out this game."
Oh my God. Yeah.
Embiid's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna sit the next 2." I mean, again, I do not think Embiid is like scared to play Ben Simmons. No. But if Simmons was like, "Yeah, my knee is acting up," people
Right.
would just rip him to shreds.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what constitutes a coward, right? It's just like he just dunks. It's like coward. It's like he's not playing the game. Not a coward. Yeah, I don't know.
I was looking forward to seeing those 2 teams at full strength, and that's just not going to happen. And these are kind of my least favorite games, where you're expecting something really fun, and you get this alternate version where the outcome kind of doesn't matter anymore. Like if the Sixers play really well and beat the Nets, be like, "Oh, they'll beat him without even those guys." You're like, yeah, but that's not the same game. The Nets stop caring when those guys aren't there.
Welcome to RJ Barrett country. Step into my dirty ass room, man. But yeah, I mean, Simmons' interview about this game was great. He was like, "Of course it's gonna be hectic. It's Philly," and he laughed through it. And like, the amount of drama that circles the Nets and certain players, even a player like Jaylen Brown, Simmons is, for someone who has a reputation of being immature, the most mature one. He's just like, "Oh, I know it's going to be hectic. They hate me. Next question." Like, yes, sire. That is the right way to do it.
Speaking of non-shooters,
Oh, God.
what's going on with your boy Giannis?
Oh, I thought you were going to say RJ Barrett. Same thing.
No, another one of your non-shooters. Giannis. We're talking about a guy who's at least superficially putting up incredible numbers again, right? And I'm like, it's Giannis. He is an MVP candidate.
volume
The Bucks are
maestro.
playing really well. Yeah, I mean, you look at him per game, and people would say, yeah, but he's averaging 30, 12, and 5. Like, he's slaughtering it. Look at these numbers. And to you, I say, yeah, true. No, big numbers. 30, 12, and 5. I mean, he's going crazy. But the weird thing is,
Oh, my God.
he went from being like this hyper efficient, unbelievably insane scorer in terms of both volume and potency, and he can't shoot anymore. He's basically a league average volume scorer. Like he's like Tatum-esque in this regard, or typical Tatum, typical Donovan Mitchell. Like putting up a lot of points, but at a league average rate. What's going on here?
I mean, we always talk about like these shooting performances kind of like varying year to year. We're seeing like De'Aaron Fox, SGA, like they're up and down. Giannis, on a visceral level, if we want to talk about the basketball thing, and then we can talk about the framing of Giannis as like that dog. It's like he's always had trouble shooting, and I think he's infected by Mamba mentality, where he's like, I need to be an all-around player. I contain multitudes as a basketball player. I'm like, no, you are a sledgehammer. You are not like a rope, like.
I'm a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
Dude, you're a mallet.
Yeah, you're a machete, right? Like, you do one thing so well, and you just have to hammer that one thing, and you will be a god-level player. I don't know. He doesn't need to be shooting these long-range shots that he cannot shoot.
So here are some numbers. His free throw percentage is currently at 58%.
Right.
That is
not good.
That is not only a career low. I mean, that is bad. That's a career low.
That's an issue. Yeah.
It's a huge crumble from last season when he was at 72%, which was still nowhere near his career high and more close to his average, but that's pretty good. But 57, real slide in that department.
His career high was 77.
And then you look at and you look at his 3-point percentage. He's currently shooting 22% from three. Now, as you said, this guy is not a good 3-point shooter, but that is far off from his career average of 29%. Another major slide. And if you go around and you look at the basket, he's not finishing as well. But the real ones are like in the paint, outside of 3 feet, mid range. He's shooting something like 32%, or 30% on shots outside of 3 feet.
Yeah.
But he takes a lot of them, more than you would think. He takes more than half of his shots are outside of the paint area where he is at his best.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. What happened here? Is it the yips?
That dog?
Does he not work hard enough to develop his talent? Is he spending too much time gaming? I mean, what's going on here? Or does he just not want it enough?
The framing of Giannis as somebody who is this driven, not sociopathic. He doesn't have that Jordan reputation, Michael Jordan, not hot dog leg Jordan. Shout out to hot dog leg Jordan. But he doesn't. The framing of him is just like his will to win, right? And that finals was incredible. Out of character with him, shot amazing. But the way we talk about Giannis to me is less interesting than the way we should be talking about him, which is this amazing player whose flaw is hubris, right? Like, he thinks he is a version of himself. He's looking at a funhouse mirror. He sees himself, but it's distorted because I don't think he is this all-around Swiss Army knife on the court. But in order to gain the respect or to keep the respect of everyone around him, I think he needs to be extraordinary. And I think just being one of the best big men of all time is just ordinary to him. And I love the aspirational aspect of him as a player. But this season, it's really kind of backfiring on him.
What's interesting to me is, as you said, the framing of Giannis, where someone like Russell Westbrook shoots, in the low 20s from three and takes 5 of them a game. We're calling him selfish, and that he's got poor shot selection. But Giannis does it, and we're saying this guy is humble.
Yeah,
this guy is. He wants to get better, and we're talking about guys who are taking the same shots, who are better at taking other shots, and in Giannis' case, extremely good at taking other shots.
Yeah.
Westbrook doesn't even have that in his bag.
Right.
He's not a finisher at the rim, especially at this point of his career, in the way that Giannis is. Like, not even close. Russ isn't even that good of a finisher anymore. But we look at them totally differently. I don't know how you can look at Giannis taking 5 threes a game at a 22% rate and not say that's selfish. I don't know. How can you look at that and say, no, this is good for his team? It's not good for his team. Yeah. Well, who's it good for? Well, I think it's good for him because, okay,
it's his brand.
That's selfishness. And then he would say,
it's
well,
marketing.
yeah, but if Giannis becomes a better 3-point shooter, that would help the team. I'm like, okay, fine, but he's not.
Right.
So I don't know, man. You know my theory. Take shots that you are good at making. That's how I feel about basketball.
If
Take
you're
the
bad
shots that
at
you're good
making
at.
some bad shots, right? Like this is the key to RJ Barrett. I don't want to talk about the Knicks. He should stop shooting threes and just attack the rim because that might be the only thing he's good at, which is good. And Giannis the same way. I kind of want to talk about Middleton and Brook Lopez a little bit because, and Drew Holiday for that matter, but Middleton and Lopez particularly because we saw last year in the playoffs. Without Middleton, Giannis and the Bucks are clearly a different team. And talk about defensive honesty. Like Giannis kind of shot them out. They were so close, but they needed Middleton a bit, who is their excellent spacer, right?
I mean, look at that Boston game. It was a crucial moment. Giannis came down, hucked up a three early in the shot clock, and that was basically the ball game.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
close.
That's a shot that
Yeah.
you need. No, you need Middleton there to
Yes, exactly.
to take those kind of shots.
And Giannis even says this in interviews. He's like, Middleton's the shooter, and I like Giannis, man. He's just like extremely corny in a way, which I want to talk about later. But I want to give Brook Lopez his flowers a bit. This guy's fucking awesome. Like he enters the league as a one-dimensional scoring offensive player in New Jersey. The joke was he didn't rebound. This tall ass dude who just like sometimes would walk away with 3 rebounds after like 35 minutes, and we were like, what is wrong with him? Does he not have that dog? And then he totally reinvents himself as a shot blocking spacer. Maybe a top 20 player in the NBA this season for what he does. He should have probably been the defensive player of the year a year Giannis won it because he was, as you said at the time, their best defender. But Giannis is just more famous, right? And
Well, yeah, that year was funny because they used all these defensive metrics to show how Giannis was the DPOY, and you look at him like, yeah, but Lopez is basically the same in all these categories.
Yeah, he's so
and the
good.
biggest difference is that when Giannis goes off the court, they're putting in Ersan, who can't do any of the things that Giannis does, and was just basically a stretch for threat. Like they use a different defensive strategy that wasn't as nearly as effective when Giannis went off the court. So that really boosted his overall stats in this crazy way that Lopez's didn't necessarily change because they would bring in Robin Lopez, who at least was like a simulacrum of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, Lopez as a evolution is really crazy
so cool.
because yeah, he was sort of a lumbering post scorer who was known for not being able to rebound, not being able to really defend in space. He could block some shots. And they said, your skills are cool though. You can shoot, you can stand in one place, you're enormous.
Yeah.
You're great at boxing out.
You're smart.
You're
Yeah.
difficult to post up. You're smart. You're great. Great. Just do that all the time. And then you go up there and you stand there and chuck up some threes. And if they put a little guy on you, then you march down and go back to kind of what you did, you know, as the Nets' leading scorer of all time. Go down there and put a little man in the weight room.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was one of the reasons I think they lost last year. As much as Middleton
sure.
was discussed,
Wasn't healthy.
Lopez missed pretty much the whole season.
Yep. Yeah, and I thought he was aging out, but it turns out like he was just hurt because he's balling. It's a beautiful thing to see, man. I really love players like that. He's not a Batman. He's not a Robin. He's not an Alfred. He might be a Commissioner Gordon on that team, to be honest. So awesome, though. And I want to talk about Giannis's ladder situation. What'd you make of that whole thing?
As I said on Twitter, it's like a performative try-hard running across like a performative dog.
Montrez?
Yeah, it's like, I've got to improve. And Trez is like, but I'm here for one reason.
That's my ball. Giannis is corny as hell, man. He's always been corny as hell. It kind of gives me the tar tingles. That's what it's like. He's performative in so many different ways. I think he's a really nice guy. I'm a fan of Giannis Antetokounmpo, but like he's kind of uncool in a way that I find deeply uncool. He's a tryhard, right? Like Jadakiss can get away with it.
He's a pick me. He's a pick me.
Yeah. I know. And we all know it, right? And he's great for kids. He's great for the NBA. Again, I'm a fan. But, like, I'd rather him have some of that Cameron in him, just, like, sitting in the lawn chair, be like, yeah, whatever, I got beat. So what?
This has nothing to this has nothing to do with him as a player. He's great, but
Yeah.
it's this idea that he and people who are advocates for him have always pushed that his success is based on him wanting it more. That he's willing to humiliate himself, and he shoots poorly from the foul line.
He
And look
wants
at him
to
out
get
there
better, right?
trying to improve. He's going out after the game to publicly pay penance for bricking from the line by
Ridiculous.
showing how he wants to get better.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
And look, I know Embiid did this in the past. There's footage.
Yeah.
Embiid went and did the same thing. Other guys have done this. I'm not saying it is
Out of the
universally
ordinary. Right.
like, yes, it's not that crazy to do it.
Right.
But him be like, I gotta get some foul shots up. Like, no, you don't. You don't,
right.
man. You don't. But it's also, I'm gonna publicly do it and show people.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, are you worse at free throw shooting and 3-point shooting because you didn't try hard, because you didn't want it enough, because you didn't practice enough, or are you just a bad shooter? You're a bad shooter. It happens. Like, some guys can't do everything. You're just a bad shooter. And look, maybe you will improve down the line. That's possible. But you were shooting worse now than you did as a rookie. Like, the mythology of Giannis should be applied to the fact that he got fucking huge. He got
exactly.
brolic. He got
Right.
ripped, and he's able to dunk on people's heads. That's the story. He transformed his body from being a skinny teenager into being a god. That's
grew.
the story. It's
Right.
not his willingness to humble himself by missing threes. That's not it. You know.
And that's
Anyway,
it.
Great,
That's
great,
it.
great player. That's our whole. That's always been our thing with him.
Yeah, totally. The narrative of him becoming better and wanting it more, it's just because we saw him as a teenager. And then he grew up and we're like, oh man, he really wants it more. I'm like, no, he just like grew. But I was watching,
But I mean, look, he does get credit 100% for
he's a champion.
for building himself into a freight train.
For sure.
Like, he deserves credit for that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get credit for his arm length or his height. But we can give him credit for turning his shoulders into into like boulders and so forth.
Yeah.
He deserves credit for that. That's real work.
Yeah. And this is still a Giannis conversation, but I was watching Richard Jefferson call a especially disastrous RJ Barrett game on national TV. And
You are
Obsessed?
you've got a Barrett bone to pick. Like, this is like the fourth time he's come up.
well, this is why.
Andrew, just give it to us.
Well, this
Give
is why.
Give
And
us,
this
give
is
us the Barrett talk.
This is a Giannis conversation, and I love this idea. This is also what happened to Shaq. Barrett Jefferson, as he was talking about Barrett, I think like sympathetically was like, he's famous for all the work he puts in off the court or outside of games, practices. He is famous for the work he put in this summer on his game. But if this is the result, those workouts don't mean anything. And what Barrett was talking about was the 10,000 hours theory, right? Like, Shaquille O'Neal was always a poor free throw shooter. And he famously took so many practice free throws. And they're like, he's good in practice. And you get to a game and the results are getting worse. And math nerds would be like, he should stop doing what he's doing because the results keep on getting worse. The sample size is big enough where we know he should probably not be practicing the way he's practicing. And this comes back to the Giannis thing, where it's like, I think we're so used to, as a country, being like, well, if you fall down, get right back up. I'm like, stay down and think for a second. Don't get right back up. You can stay down and enjoy the scenery down there, think, and then eventually maybe you'll get up, maybe you won't. But like, you don't have to pop up right away. And Giannis, I think, has been infected with like this Kobe Mamba mentality thing, where he's like, if I don't show you guys how much I care, then my personal story is incomplete.
You know, sort of on this topic, but I mean related, is that free throws are weird.
For sure.
You know, we've talked about this in the book a little bit, and we've seen this with guys where it really is psychological to some degree. And yeah, guys who are good shooters like Nash or Curry or generally awesome free throw shooters. They have that coordination. They have the form. You know, they are good shooters from both spots for a reason. And someone like Giannis or Ben Simmons are bad free throw shooters because they're just bad at shooting from anywhere. Like, put them anywhere, they'll miss a shot. It could be from the free throw. Like, I'll do it.
That's like me. I'll miss from anywhere, man. Let's go.
Like, you want free throws? You want baseline, 3-point line? Just put me there. I'll throw it up. You know, and I'm gonna miss most of them. I can do that. Like 3/4, they're all But I'm versatile. I can miss from anywhere in God's
I got
green
multitudes of missing.
Like, I'll do it. Show me a spot. I'll give you 22%.
Show me a shot and I'll miss it for sure.
But free throws are weird because I feel like I've been in a gym by myself and shooting free throws.
Wow.
And when you're
lonely
warmed
boy.
up, I'm like, oh, I can make like 90%. You know, just sitting there getting your own rebound, like, whap, go get it, whap, whap. Like, 90%. Then you get in a game, it's just different. It's different. You know, I think I remember playing in one league game, and yeah, I got fouled a bunch. I went like 1 of 8 from the line, and I'm there like, what the fuck is going on? I'm a 90% shooter when I'm in a gym by myself. Why can't I make a free throw this game?
That's why they call you White Giannis. I get it.
But I mean, it was an anomaly. Like, you know, normally I was probably shooting like, I don't know, 70% from the line, something reasonable. But just one game, I just couldn't do it, and I was staring at it, and I was questioning my form. It is a different kind of shot than other ones. In basketball, it's kind of weird that it exists in basketball also. It's kind of just odd, right?
I
In
mean,
a sport where like
yeah.
big guys and little guys have different skills. They're like, well, here's a skill that benefits little guys. If you get fouled, you go to shoot here, and it's like, well, what about dunking? Could we jam for 2 points? How
Right.
about that? Like, no, it's a jump shot.
And it should only be one shot. I don't know why it's 2, but it is the only time the viewer gets to talk about a certain thing, right? Is it the tennis thing? It is the starting pitcher who gives up the game-winning home run, or the relief pitcher who gives up the game-winning home run, and we look at him as the batters running around the bases. Like, there is something about a free throw that is like the most about retelling something. The most content we get during a basketball game is stressful down the stretch free throws, right? Do you have that fortitude? All this stuff comes into play. A normal basketball play has too many moving parts to kind of isolate like something flowery to say. Passing, defenders, missed connections here and there on the court. So like, I get the fixation on the free throws, but we fixate on we already have the story before we see the result. We already know how to talk about Ben Simmons if he misses one. And when he makes 3 out of 4, we're like, there's no story there. He'll miss him next time. But with Giannis, it's confusing because we've formulated the story of him already because we've seen it on the biggest stage in the finals work. And when it doesn't work, we're just like, is this a malfunction? And me and you know, it's just a fluctuating skill.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, you'll see a guy come to the free throw line late in the game and miss a shot, and you say, wow, that was nerves. Like, or it's math.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, totally.
You know, okay, so you're a 75% foul shooter. Pretty good, right? You know, that's a good foul shooter. Like, this guy, you know, he's going to make these shots 75% of the time. Yeah, but that means that you miss one of the shots half the time you go to the line.
Yeah.
Like, that's the number. You miss 25%. If you shoot 4 free throws, you're probably going to miss one, and that's the math. Half the time this guy goes to the line with 2 shots, and the game there, like, oh my God, this guy's a good shooter. Don't choke. Half the time he misses one just by the math.
This is the thing I have the most trouble with is probability, especially with like elections and all this stuff. But like, I see a 90% shooter like DeMar DeRozan or Steve Nash, and I think it's 100%, right? So when they miss a shot, I'm like, ooh, he's a 90% shooter. I'm like, right, he misses 1 out of 10. That was the one. Or he'll miss 2 out of 10
Right,
and then
right,
make
right.
20 in a row. You know, like it is just math to your point. But that's where I have the most trouble because I construe all these numbers. If it's a 40% shooter, I'm like, he's going to miss both. I'm like, he's going to hit 4 out of 10. Or, you know, whatever.
No, when people have discussed like the hacking strategies, the number that it used to be, maybe this has changed, but it used to be that basically anyone who shoots over something like 45% isn't really worth fouling. That was just kind of the math. And there are some moving parts in that because like if you foul someone and they go to the line, it means that you're not going to have a transition opportunity. Almost always. The other team's going to be set back. So it's going to hurt your offense on the next possession. So when you you hack a player, even if they aren't that good, they're generally going to always have a set defense when you're going against them, which hurts the value of your possession.
Hack at your own risk, always.
Yeah, and again, a guy like you can get lucky and a guy can just shoot terribly. But for the most part, a guy going for like whatever we're saying, 4 or 5 of 10 from the line, that's kind of like regular half-court offense, plus maybe an offensive rebound gets in the mix, and then you're going against a set defense. Like, the hacking strategy doesn't necessarily work that well.
I don't like it. I don't like the way we frame the minutes of a game, too, when we hack, when the free throws happen, pressure situations. And there are statistics that say our players' behavior changes at the end of games, for sure. But that's a lot to do with our psychology of the clock. Like, yeah, to your point of like pressure situations, I was listening to the ESPN Daily, and it was a conversation between Pablo and JJ Redick about mental fortitude, and it was supposed to be about Ben Simmons, but it turned into an overarching, basically, story of JJ Redick's life. It was awesome. I really enjoyed that, and there was a part of it where he said, if you're not willing to deal with the mental aspect of the game and the fans' reaction to it, then you're missing what you signed up for. Like, we are all doing this thing, and we're all putting ourselves in this situation because that's what we asked for. And I think that was problematic in 2 ways. And the other way you can talk about better than I can, but the one way pertinent to this conversation is the way we frame the actions of within a clock, I think, is so strange. Pressure, mental reflection, right? If DeMar DeRozan hits 10 of 10 free throws in the first half and goes 2 for 6 and they lose by 2 points in the second half, I'm like, but he hit all those in the beginning. Those were pressure situations as much as that, because this is just counting.
Yes, it's like eye of the beholder stuff, right?
Right.
Where like those late misses in the game count in his percentage just the same.
For sure.
As early misses. But at the same time, we interpret them totally differently. A guy goes to the line and goes 0 of 2, who's a really good foul shooter. Normally we say that was nerves. I'm like, maybe it was. Maybe it was nerves. They're up there. They're oh fuck. But also, these guys take a zillion foul shots. They've been in big games their entire life. They've been generally the best player on the court every time they play. Does that make them immune from nerves? No. But at the same time, they might have just missed because they miss foul shots sometimes.
No one on earth can explain why they made or miss it, even the person.
Yeah, as I was saying, as an adult playing basketball, I was in one situation where I had to make clutch free throws.
Yeah.
I got fouled late in the game, and I missed the first one. And I was like, all right, I'm not being that guy. I'm going to be that dog. And I made the second one. They fouled me again, and I was flush off of a make and made the last 2. And that, like, sealed the game. And in my mind, I interpreted it as you would want to interpret that. I missed that first one. I was like, no, I'm a clutch player. I'm going to make these next 3. But if the game had changed situation and I'd made the first 3 and I missed the fourth one, I'd be like, wow, I choked. I fucked it up. Instead, since we won, I can look at that miss as like a learning, like a moment of learning, and then finding the true me, which was to make the next 3 foul shots. again, if the situation was reversed, maybe I'm a choker. There it was, the biggest shot, and I missed it.
I mean, it's the whole Giannis thing. He played in a different way in that finals, and we got to see it, and it was incredible. I really enjoyed that. But it's like, it doesn't have to be a reflection on his character, right? Like, it almost never is. And that Redick pod was so interesting to me because I remembered all the players that keep on telling us that we kind of talk about in detail in The Joy of Basketball, available on sale, perfect stocking stuffer for the celebration.
What a great gift idea.
Wow, it's just amazing. It fits right in that book-sized stocking you have over your mantle, on your mantle. But you think about all the players who don't want to play basketball, right? Like, and they're usually tall. They're usually financially motivated, being like, yo, if I sign this one contract, I can take care of my entire family. It's a big ass deal. Do I like being yelled at after every game? No. Do I like to travel and be on a plane? I'm homesick. We've heard this so many times. And for JJ Redick, who isn't especially tall or doesn't come from an impoverished background, is like, no, we play the game for the high pressure situations. I'm like, maybe you do. That's true. But to say that the dog comes into play with every basketball action, I think is incorrect.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, but when you say that's what you get paid the big bucks for, I'm like, that's true. We were discussing this last night. I'm like, that's true. You get paid a lot of money because there is scrutiny, because people are paying their money to see you, and that's where you get the money from, whether it's through television or people who are going to the games or buying the merch. It's that your money is coming from the fact that you are on a public stage, and with that comes scrutiny. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I also do think, though, that if you're really good at basketball, you're in the NBA because you're good at basketball. You're not there because you said, I want to be a basketball star, or I want people to know me for being great at basketball. It's because you're good at that sport. And I think there are other guys, the Larry Sanders or whoever, who are like, this isn't worth it. But most guys, even if they don't love being a basketball star per se, they love being good at basketball and they love the sport, and they say, well, this trade-off is worth it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't love it when I walk down the street and people ask me, do I play for an NBA team, and I sign an autograph. I don't love that when I'm going to get coffee, being recognized. Like, it's not great. If I go to a restaurant or club, people are taking sneak photos of me and they're on Deadspin or whatever. But it's worth it.
Right.
The trade-off is okay. Like, all in all, I get to play basketball. I make a bunch of money, and there are some really annoying downsides to it, but I'll take the deal.
Yeah.
And then you get a Larry Sanders who says, actually, I won't.
Right. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Right? Like, I think of Manute Bol. From some of the stories I've heard, a wonderful dude, obviously. He didn't love basketball, but he was just like very tall. And, you know, he did it for a number of reasons. He was a humanitarian. He sent his money back to his country. He was like an extraordinary person. But I don't think he was in the NBA because he was a dog, right? He was somebody who fit in the NBA. Not completely, but he fit. And he saw an opportunity to do something good with his life, and he did it. And that's an extreme example. But, like, to say that everyone wants what Giannis wants, I think is too simplistic, right? And to your point, I think it's annoying for Kyrie Irving. But the flip side is more annoying. Nobody listening to him. Not having any platform.
Yeah, when Kyrie is like, I just want to be able to express my ideas and not have anyone judge me for it. I'm like,
Are you really?
me and you both, brother.
yeah, exactly. But when? Can you pick the times, you know?
No, I just want to publicly muse
Yeah.
and face no scrutiny for any of my smart takes.
Look at me, don't look at me. Yeah.
Before we get out of here, let's quickly acknowledge the hottest team in the NBA right now. Not the Boston Celtics. No, sorry, Bob. We're talking about the Sacramento Kings, the former Rochester Royals, who are bathing in the glow of this Rochester Renaissance. You can it's trickling down to the Sacramento Kings. It's that powerful. They are currently first in the NBA in offensive rating, 119.3, which would be the highest in NBA history if, in fact, they were able to keep it rolling for the full season. Their defense is one of the worst, but they are currently 9-6, and I think they've won a whole bunch in a row. And they've got their beam that goes up after their victories in Sacramento. It is high times for Rochester West.
After trading away their best player, Tyrese Halliburton, and getting Sabonis back, I think everyone enjoyed that trade. Everyone was shocked because Halliburton hadn't played very long. But it was a good trade for both teams, I thought. And De'Aaron Fox became a different player with more space and the ball in his hands. It made me think of Elon Musk and taking over Twitter, and what happens when a tech person thinks they know they contain multitudes as well. It's like, not only am I a fierce businessman, I understand human nature. I understand the idea of conversation. I understand basketball. And when Ron Adive took over the Kings, he was like, oh, there's so many hacks. I can't even... First, full court press the whole time. I coached my daughter's team. Let's do this. Oh, cherry picking. We're going to leave one guy under the basket the whole time, play defense with 4 players. And then after years of ridicule, he kind of settled into just like, okay, we're going to do what the Warriors did. We're going to let them do the work for us. Put my hubris aside and just try to be a good modern team. They're winning a ton of games, man.
But I also kind of love that he thought Nick Stauskas was going to be his Seth Curry.
Remember
he thought that Buddy Hield was going to be his Clay. Yeah. He thought that other chubby lad was going to be their Draymond. Like he really tried to make a full simulacrum of the Warriors. Like, all right, scorer, creator, shooter, and our jack of all trades, undersized center. Yeah. Like, boom, we got it. And what's funny is you look at this team right now and you're like, oh, you're not the where's it all? You can't defend. Yeah. You are exactly. You are the Sacramento Kings of old. Like you are the team with, Vlade. And a bunch of European shooters. Like that's what you built. And I think they're cool. I like that they're winning games. I like when teams win games with an identity. I'm not one of those people who says you have to have an identity. You got to be tough at this. I'm just like, do what you're good at. Be the Kings. Like, you know what? Can't really defend, but maybe we're just gonna hang 150 on you. Let's try.